Okay, now that you guys have taken a few minutes to actually focus in on what 3 relationships you recognize that you could apply a coaching approach because you want that buy-in process to occur more frequently, whether that's people that you're leading on a team, whether that's people that you're mentoring, or maybe it's even your own family, maybe even your own kids. So now that you've focused in on the relationships where you really do want that to occur, now the question is, how do you actually take a coaching approach? What are the skills and the habits that you need to cultivate if you're going to be great at drawing the best out from others and taking them to that light bulb moment? Okay, so let's break it down. Really, it comes down to 3 habits that you've got to be committed to. How to take a coaching approach. First of all, establish rapport and be authentic with the other person. You really can't have a great coaching conversation unless there's already trust established in a relationship. So day in and day out, week in and week out, in relationships that are ongoing, you got to establish an environment in that relationship where there is trust and you build rapport so that there's really an authentic connection. And even relationships maybe where there's an opportunity to converse with someone just maybe unexpectedly, where there's not an ongoing relationship. You still have to have the ability to build rapport with someone so that they trust you enough to let you ask questions, and they trust you enough to draw the best out. Okay, so first is focus on establishing rapport and being authentic. Then the second habit is to learn to recognize where a person is on the stages of change. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about what those stages of change are, but the idea here is that process of growth that happens that we looked at earlier, it doesn't happen at the same speed for every person. And so your ability to understand where a person is in that process of growth, are they just thinking about change, or are they actually ready to start making some change and taking action, or are they well into the process? Your ability to understand where they are is going to help you match that point and just continue to move them on a little bit at a time in the process of change. Because people don't grow all at once, they grow one step at a time. And your ability to play the role of that trusted relationship really is enhanced by your ability to understand where they are. And then the third habit that will help you take a coaching approach is to be purposeful about your conversations. So whether it's that 3-minute conversation that happens maybe in the hallway at work, or maybe even a conversation that happens via email, real informal, impromptu conversations, all the way over to more planned and structured conversations. So it might be the kind of conversation where you schedule to actually sit down over a cup of coffee with someone or have a conversation in your office. So whether it's really informal and unplanned, or it's really planned and really structured, whatever type of conversation it is, if you're able to go into those conversations with a sense of purpose, then you're going to actually get a lot more out of them. You're going to be able to go into that conversation and draw the best out of people by using questions and not just inserting and pushing your ideas on another person. And you're going to be able to draw out that buy-in. So we're going to spend the rest of the day going a little further into each of those 3 areas, and those are the things that are going to help you really develop a coaching approach. Okay? So before we really dive in, we're going to take a few minutes and actually talk about some common questions that come up when anyone is learning what it takes to actually develop a coaching approach. So let's start here, Jerry. Talk about the difference between coaching, mentoring, training, counseling. Okay. How is coaching different, and how does it fit in with those other types of development?
I think that's a really important point. Okay, so let's just talk about training and teaching, and we'll just keep those two kind of a training and teaching. All right, so today I'm here and we're doing a training or teaching class. What do I have to train you or teach you something? I have to have knowledge, right? And so the limitation then becomes, can I teach or train you something that I don't know? No, it's really difficult. All right, let's just talk about mentoring. Mentoring, when you talk mentoring, what am I sharing with you if I'm your mentor? I'm sharing experiences, right? And so can I share an experience with you that I haven't had? Okay, no, I can't do that, right? And so we see the limitation of both teaching, training, or mentoring becomes something that's in me. That becomes the limitation. I can't teach you something I don't know. I can't share an experience with you that I haven't had. And that becomes a lid. All right, now the great thing about coaching is because it's not coming from me, because remember, coaching is about drawing out of you those great ideas, helping you become more aware and helping you process light bulb moments and helping things come out of you, then I no longer become the limitation, right? Then so the great thing about coaching is there is no limitation. And so I can take and take anybody that wants to grow and learn, and as a coach, no matter my limitation, no matter my ceilings, I can help that person grow to a new level. So it's a very powerful tool that has huge, broad applications, okay? And let me give you an example. John Whitmore in the book, in his book, Coaching for Performance, relates a story. And there's a resort, and it's a mountain resort, and it's a year-round resort. So in the wintertime, they have snow sports and stuff like that. In the summertime, they transition to things like tennis and all that kind of stuff. And it was in the summertime, and they had so many people wanting to play tennis that they didn't have enough tennis instructors. But they had all these ski instructors sitting around with nothing to do. So they got the right idea, said, hey, why don't we take the ski instructors and have them coach tennis? And so seriously, I'm going to coach tennis? No, they said, here's the deal. They talked about the coaching approach, and they said, here's the thing. The only thing you cannot do is you can never pick up a tennis racket. Because as soon as you do, they're going to know you don't know how to play tennis, right? And so they did. They had the whole ruse on, and at the end of the season, all right, who do you think performed better? The tennis players that were coached by tennis coaches or the tennis players that were coached by ski instructors? That's exactly right. And the reason was because they weren't trying to teach something that they knew. They weren't limited by that. They had the ability to draw the great stuff out and to just observe and to ask questions and to help the people get better on their own. And so that's just a great illustration of how coaching really does work. And you don't have to be the subject matter expert. Now, the fourth thing I want to talk about is counseling. Because counseling, again, is different. And with counseling, what you're really trying to do there, or what you really are doing, is you're helping people deal with past issues. And so as a coach, it's really important to understand when you start, coaching should be forward thinking. It should be, where am I at and where am I going? When you start really getting into, okay, how do I deal with the past? That's counseling. And as a coach, it's important to recognize that because not all of us are equipped to deal with those things. And so when you find yourself there, just recognize it, acknowledge it, and then come up with the right plan of action from there for that person relative to that. All right? All right, so Jeff, when is coaching not appropriate?
It's a great question, and that's important to keep in mind that a coaching approach is not always the right approach as you're working with people. So let's think about when it would not be a good idea. Here's a few specific instances, and when you just need to recognize I need to use another tool as I'm leading or working with people. First of all, when the consequences of not intervening in a situation or in a person's life are too significant. Remember, a coaching approach is all about drawing the best out from someone else and enabling them to choose their own steps and own their own growth. But if they're headed in a direction where the consequences of that direction are not good and they just aren't worth the risk, whether it's consequences to themselves or to people around them that they work with or their family or whoever it may be, then sometimes you just have to be more direct, and a coaching approach may not be appropriate. So that's a time when you probably need to take a little more direct approach. And another time I would say that coaching probably doesn't make sense is if you're leading a team or a person and when you haven't provided basic expectations or the basic training that they need to succeed. So you can't recruit somebody for a new leadership role and then throw them in, with them not knowing what the win is, what is success, what's expected of me, and then say, now what do you want to do? Now what you can do is you can say, here's what the win is, here's what I need from you on this team, here's what success looks like in your role. Now, how can I help you get there? So after you define those expectations and you help people know what they need to accomplish, then you can take a coaching approach and help them get there. But don't start that process until they know exactly what's expected. And then a third time that's important to remember when a coaching approach probably doesn't make sense is when the other person that you're developing is completely unaware of an issue that they really do need to address. So if there's a real problem that someone is just simply blind to, and they don't see it, they don't understand it, that's a situation where a little more of a directive approach makes more sense. Just lay it out. Now again, you can take the same approach. When someone becomes aware of a problem that they really need to respond to, then it's very natural to say, now how can I help you deal with that problem? And hopefully they would take ownership at that point, and then a coaching approach makes a lot of sense. But sometimes it's important just to lay it out. Recognize that coaching is not the only tool in your toolbox when it comes to developing people and leading people. It's a very powerful tool, but sometimes you need to use other tools. Okay? So let's talk a little bit more about coaching and leadership. So Jerry, how does a coaching approach actually help a person be a better leader? Let's talk about that.
Well, it does. And what we're going to look at is part of the research that we done, or the sources that we're using, is a book called The Extraordinary Coach, and it was written by a guy named Jack Zinger. And Jack Zinger also is one of the founders of Zinger Folkman, which is a leadership management development company, and they work with companies all over the world. And so they literally have worked with hundreds of companies and done a lot of research with thousands of different leaders all across the board, all different kinds of industries and all those kinds of things. And the great thing about the research is that they really use a 360 tool a lot. And the 360 tool is where you're evaluated, you have a self-evaluation, you're evaluated by your boss, of course, and you're evaluated by your peers, and you're evaluated by people that work for you. And so it's just a real good perspective of a person's leadership ability. And then they also used kind of evaluations on how actually their performance was actually not just perceived by the people around them, but then actually how did the performance actually come in relative to goals and stuff like that. And the premise is, okay, let's talk about when somebody is perceived as a great leader, right? And there's two components to that, to great leadership. One is drive for results, all right, the ability for us to get results, to make things happen. And the other one is coaching and mentoring, the ability of a leader to coach and mentor. So you have two components, all right? And then you have the perception or the likelihood that somebody's perceived as a great leader relative to these two components, all right? So let's just take, and leaders where drive for results is a clear demonstrated strength for the leader. But coaching and mentoring is not a demonstrated, it's a weakness, all right? So where you have that combination in a leader, drive for results is a strength, coaching and mentoring a weakness, what is the likelihood that they're gonna be perceived as a great leader? What do you guys think? Likelihood that they're gonna be perceived as a great leader? What percentage? 20, 30, 50, Actually, the number is 7% of the time. When that is true, in only 7% of the cases was that person perceived or viewed as a great leader. All right, now let's turn the table a little bit. Let's say that drive for results is a weakness for the leader, but coaching and mentoring is a demonstrated strength. Okay, in that scenario, what do you think the probability that person is going to be viewed as a great leader? What do you think that goes to? It goes higher, lower, 20, 30, higher, lower, yeah? Actually, 4% of the time. So only 4% of the time. So that just tells you there's no substitute for drive for results, okay? Okay, but none of those are very good. All right, now when both of those two things are demonstrated strengths, what do you think happens to the perception or the likelihood that person is going to be viewed and perform as a great leader? It's 87% of the time. So clearly, drive for results is important, but strong coaching and mentoring is the ability to draw the best out of the people around you is a clear component to not just being perceived as a great leader, but actually performing as a great leader and becoming a great leader. So that's one of the reasons why that skill set is a really valid, really important skill set. All right, now let's take a look at some situational leadership styles, okay? And what you're looking at, either in your book or on screen, is a diagram. And on the left part of the diagram, you've got this hands-off style of leadership. In the middle, you've got a collaborative style of leadership. And on the right side, you've got a directive kind of control, command and control leadership style, okay? And different situations oftentimes warrant a different style. And any one of these could be an appropriate style. Let's say that Lindsay comes to work for me and she's new in the role. Early on, it might be appropriate for me to take a more directive approach because she's new and learning the ropes and there's a lot of information. And so that might be an appropriate strategy at that point in time. And as Lindsay grows and progresses, it might make sense for me then to transition my style to be more collaborative, to have a little bit more of a giver. She's understanding more, she's growing. And so that might be an appropriate next step, is to go to kind of a more collaborative kind of approach. And then as she becomes skilled and really gets it, then it's probably appropriate for me to take more of a hands-off approach and just check in and just make sure that she's got the tools that she needs to be successful. But then I don't have to do as much. So any one of those things can be an appropriate style of leadership. The problem is that we typically land in one place. And organizations typically are built in one style. And so when we look at how organizations work in our Western culture, typically, historically, it's been more on the right, more of a directive, command and control. You have a hierarchy of who's in charge. Certainly the military works that way. And what works in the military is because the military is designed that way with a clear structure and hierarchy, because the realization is that, you know what? If Chris is my commander person, there's a good chance he could be dead tomorrow. I mean, it's a sobering thing to realize, but that's why the military is built that way. Well, most corporations don't have to worry about that. But still, we have this system. And the system has not been around forever. This whole directive, hierarchy, command and control system is really a result of the Industrial Revolution, the last 100 or so years. And does anybody know what that was designed to do? Anybody have any ideas what that was designed to? Absolutely. It was to increase productivity. It was to help people do repetitive tasks over and over again more efficiently. You think about Henry Ford and the Model T and some of those kinds of things. Well, now the world is a lot more complex. And that style of leadership, it doesn't work anymore, because anytime you get into complex thought, emotion, any of those kind of things, that kind of leadership structure really begins to break down. And so you see this more collaborative approach come in. You see companies today like Southwest Airlines and Google and Zappos Shoes and some of those that have an environment that's built less on the directive, command and control, and more on a collaborative style of leadership. And I think you're going to begin to see that continue to change with the rate that information is coming at us all the time and the increase in technology. And things are becoming more complex, and it's going to require a leadership style that has the ability to be more flexible. So that's a really, really important thing. And what we're talking about, we're talking about this whole directive, command and control kind of structure being 100 years old. And we're talking about coaching and how you help people learn by asking questions. It's called the Socratic method. And Socrates was doing that 2,000 years ago. And so what we're really doing is we're taking something that's worked for thousands of years, and we're just taking it and implementing it in a developmental structure. All right, so Jeff, what's next?
Well, let's talk a little bit about how you can provide coaching, take a coaching approach beyond your current relationships, because that's a question that comes up commonly. You've already identified the relationships where you want to lead people to own their own growth, and you want to draw the best out. But what if you really want to have more opportunities to develop people and invest in people and take that coaching approach? So here's a few ideas. First, just recognize that it starts by making yourself available to help others. So when people know that, this person just cares about me. They want to listen well. They want to take interest in the things that I'm interested in and where I want to grow and develop. And they want to challenge me with great questions and help me think a little bit more in a more focused way about my next steps. Just when they recognize that, they just know that this person is here to help me, then that's an opportunity to take a coaching approach. And what tends to happen is when you help someone, they share that with another person. And then that opens up often another relationship for you to invest in people. So it's not always about how can I be a coach. The real question is, how can I just help people? And look for those opportunities, and they will open up, and those opportunities will come your way. And a couple other thoughts is that you might think specifically about getting into environments where people are looking for someone to help them take next steps, maybe after some training that they've experienced or a specific development experience. So look for opportunities where a group is learning a new skill, and they're looking for people to help them unpack, how do I actually put this skill into practice in my life? Oftentimes, that's what people need, is a coaching approach to help draw the best out. And then another suggestion is that you might consider taking on a role, a leadership role that really requires you to develop other people. If the role that you're in, whether it's through your church or whether it's on the job at work or whether it's something in the community, if the role that you're in really requires that you invest in others and develop others, that's just going to naturally give you an opportunity to take a coaching approach. And then one last question that comes up often as people are learning to develop others and take a coaching approach is, where can I get tools and resources? And so just want to mention that there's a great link, or there's a website actually you're looking at now. It's resources.lifechurch.tv. And you can go there and search using the tag coaching and find great tools that are going to help you be better at developing others and you be more effective at taking a coaching approach. And you're also going to find tools and resources that others can use as they're growing in whatever area of development that they choose, whether it's in their personal life or their spiritual life or professional life. Books, assessments, just a whole variety of resources that can really be helpful to people. So just know that that's a great place to get tools and resources. And recognize the more committed you are to developing people, the more important it is that you have tools to help you be better at that and help others as they're taking steps of growth.